Shame. Poor Boody's not having a very nice time, is he? I wonder what's going to happen next. Well, here we go with chapter 16. When it rains, it really pours. It's dark. There are people in my room. Men. They're shouting. They reach down and drag me from my bed into a room of more shouting and screaming. Torches flash over the walls. A dog's jaws, wet with stringy saliva, snap at the end of a leash. Black shadows snake across the room. My hands are pulled behind my back. A heavy boot buckles my knees and I sink to the floor. I try to beg, "Don't shoot me!" But nothing comes out, or it gets lost beneath the barking of men and dogs. Outside, a car starts up and races away. This is how they get you. They come in the middle of the night and drag you out of bed and give you a choice, kneeling or standing. Standing, I say. I want to stand. "Shut that Kuranga boy up," a voice growls, and a gloved hand smacks me across the face. I don't say anything after that. I just let my head slump forward and try to block out the sound of crying. I know it's Mum, even in the darkness, because Grandma never cries. "You can shut her up as well," the voice says, and for a moment I feel as though I've heard the voice somewhere before. Then I hear the sound of a gloved hand striking my mother's face. I try to get up, but a strong arm pulls me back. "Are they all restrained?" "Yes, sir." "Where are the lights?" "Generator must have died, sir." "Well, get the emergency lighting out of the van then. You can't rely on anything in this district. And get that dog to shut up, or we'll have the whole neighborhood here in a minute." The dog is muzzled, and for a moment the only sound is a quiet sobbing. Then something is dragged through the doorway and a blinding light fills the room. I try to raise my hand to my eyes, but something digs into my wrists and stops me. Slowly, my eyes adjust to the brightness. Half a dozen men stand around the room, but my eyes are drawn to the one in the center. The chief inspector stands with his hands on his hips, his uniform stretched across his stomach, looking from me to Mum to Grandma. Mum is on her knees on the opposite side of the room, next to the table. Grandma sits in her armchair, her hands cable-tied in her lap, and she stares coolly at the chief inspector. "Where's Dad?" I ask, and the policeman next to me raises his hand in anticipation of the order. But the chief inspector waves it away. "Your father has been taken into custody for questioning." "But why?" I ask. This time the chief inspector nods. The policeman strikes me with the back of his hand and my cheek stings from the blow. "It's okay, Boody," Mum says. "Everything will be all right." The chief inspector smirks. "We'll see about that." Someone appears in the darkness just beyond the door, and the rest of the policemen stand to attention. The chief inspector takes a seat, propping his feet on the table and making it squeak. "Come in, brother," he says, still smirking. "Don't be shy." The dragon steps through the doorway, his gold chains and bejeweled hands glinting in the harsh light. As he passes the police dog, he stops to pat it on the head. "You can untie them," he says, not looking up. And immediately the policemen busy themselves with the cable ties around our wrists. I get up and rush over to hug Mum and Grandma, anger and relief flooding through me. "Two of you wait in the van," the chief inspector says to the policeman. "The rest of you can go." The policemen file out, and the dragon sits on the opposite side of the table to his brother. Nobody speaks while the dragon takes a packet of siri from his pocket and starts chewing. The chief inspector picks at something under his nails. My stomach squirms at the thought of them mentioning the stolen football boots in front of my family. Finally, Grandma breaks the silence. "What are you doing?" she asks. "What do you mean by coming here and taking my son away?" The two brothers look at each other, and the dragon makes a gesture with his hand for the chief inspector to answer. As I am sure you're aware, he says, still fiddling with a fingernail, you have 2 sons. I expect Grandma's expression to change, the way it does whenever I accidentally mention my uncle, but she continues to stare at the brothers. And I'm sure you're equally aware, the chief inspector continues, that one of your sons recently escaped from his cell on Nusa Kambangan. Suddenly the picture in the paper makes sense, and the knife inside twists at the thought I ever suspected Dad of doing something bad. Grandma narrows her eyes at the chief inspector. And as I am sure you're aware, she says, Elvis is completely innocent. So why is he under arrest? You see, when a convict escapes, the chief inspector says, and I notice Grandma flinch slightly, it is quite common for him to contact his family. More often than not, fugitives are caught hiding under their parents' bed or in the latrine at the back of the family home. It's probably a result of being locked up for so long that they don't know what to do when they get out. They use up all their imagination in the escape attempt, then they resort to life before their imprisonment. I haven't heard from Aaron at all, Grandma says, and for a moment I get confused. Then I realize that my uncle must be called Aaron. I can't believe I didn't work it out sooner. Elvis Aaron Presley. That's what we're investigating, the chief inspector says with a smile, and I'm sure we can rely on your cooperation. What do you want us to do? Asks Mum. Here's how it's going to work, the dragon says, sitting forward and spitting a stream of red saliva onto the floor. At some point, Aaron is going to contact you. He doesn't have a choice. He has no one else. And unless you want Elvis to take his place on Nusa Kambangan, I suggest you let us know as soon as Aaron gets in touch. Grandma laughs, but it's short and bitter. You can't expect a mother to sacrifice one son to save another. You don't have a choice, the dragon says. With Elvis in jail, it won't be long before you can't make your rent payments, and then you'll be fending for yourselves in the slums. Grandma looks down at her hands, folding them over each other. And why is it so important that I turn my son over to you? Well, the chief inspector says, recapturing a dangerous criminal? He's not dangerous, Grandma says, her voice rising. He might be a criminal, but he's not dangerous. Now, bear that in mind, the chief inspector says, smirking. As I was saying, recapturing a notorious criminal would go a long way towards furthering my career. With a scalp like that on my record, it wouldn't be long before I was looking at an office in the rich district. So you can extort politicians and bankers, Mum asks, glaring at the dragon. The dragon shrugs like he doesn't know what Mum means, but the gold chains around his neck wink at us in the light. However, the dragon says, if Aaron were to cooperate in a little export project I've been working on, we could help keep him out of prison for good. Couldn't we, brother? The chief inspector scowls, but eventually nods his agreement. That could be arranged. So you see, the dragon continues, creating another red splat on the floor. It's in everybody's best interests for you to let us know as soon as he gets in touch. No one replies. The dragon and the chief inspector exchange a glance and stand up. You know where to find me, the dragon says, pausing on his way out to pat my cheek. The chief inspector calls 2 of the policemen in to remove the light, and after it's been loaded up and driven away, we are finally left alone. Dawn is breaking outside, and a ghostly half-light creeps into the room. Mum rushes to the table and starts scrubbing at the city spit stains on the floor. I sit down on the rug by Grandma's feet and start playing with the tassels. I wrap them around my finger so tightly that 3 little needle cuts across my fingertips split open and fresh blood seeps into the tassels. I don't feel any pain. What are we going to do? Mum asks, still scrubbing at the floor. Grandma shakes her head. I don't know. I can't choose between my sons. Mum stops scrubbing and blows a loose hair out of her face. They can't be trusted, can they, she says, when they say they could keep Aaron out of prison? I don't know, Grandma says, but I'd have to betray him to find out. Looking up at Grandma, I notice there are tears in her eyes. Then she says the last thing I expected to say. Would you like to hear a story, Boody? Okay. Mum stops scrubbing at the floor, even though she hasn't finished removing the stains, and sits back on her heels to listen. Once upon a time, there was a soldier. He was everything a captain could want from a private, strong, loyal, and dependable. The captain trusted the soldier completely, and one day she entrusted something very precious to him. As expected, the soldier took his duty very seriously, and the treasure remained safe in his guardianship. But one night, while everyone in the barracks slept, a surprise attack awoke the soldier from his slumber. Sluggish with sleep and gripped by panic, he rushed from his bunk to safety, forgetting the treasure in his haste. It was only when he emerged from the building and saw his captain that the soldier realized his mistake. He returned to the barracks, but it was already overrun by enemy troops. He could see no way back in. Falling to his knees, he began to weep for the lost treasure, when suddenly the major, someone very dear to the captain, emerged with the prize. The soldier and the captain were overjoyed to be reunited with the treasure, but the major was gravely injured, and he died shortly afterwards. A single tear spills over Grandma's cheek, but she doesn't seem to notice. This devastated the captain, and in her anger, she said many unfair things. She blamed the soldier for the major's death. She called him a coward. She even wished him dead. Grief made the captain blind to all the acts of loyalty and steadfastness for which the soldier was renowned. The captain drove the soldier away, and the soldier ran. Tears drip from Grandma's chin onto the blanket across her lap, but still she doesn't wipe them away. When the captain's fury had subsided, she longed to undo the thoughtless things she had said in grief. She searched for the soldier, but the soldier did not want to be found. He had fled into the wilderness, pushing further and further into the darkness, trying to overrun the hurt he believed he deserved. He fell in with rogues. He broke laws to survive. The captain lost all hope of seeing him again. And now this, Grandma mumbles. My cheeks are wet with tears. Over by the table, Mum cries silently. A memory from long ago swims up in my mind. I'm sitting on Grandma's knee, and she's telling me about the time I slept through an earthquake, a huge earthquake, and we laugh at the ridiculousness of the idea. I laugh and laugh at the image of buildings crashing to the ground while I dream peacefully. Grandma laughs with me, but the smile in her eyes dies long before the smile on her lips. And then I recall another memory. Grandma speaks very seriously about the time Grandpa died in an earthquake. She says, if it wasn't for the family curse, he probably would have survived, but the hospitals were full and he lost too much blood. And it never really occurred to me that these stories happened at the same time, that they were both the same story. I knew, but at the same time I didn't know, didn't understand. In the past, I felt annoyed at Grandpa for dying. I felt like he abandoned me. But he carried me to safety when no one else could reach me, when everything was falling apart. And he died doing it. He saved me. I have to say it out loud. Grandpa saved me. Grandma blinks, and fresh tears roll across her cheeks. But they are for an old hurt. And I know, even though she doesn't have the family curse, I just know she's bleeding on the inside. And then outside I hear the first fat drops of the rainy season. They seem to fall one by one at first, uncertain whether it's the right time. But then they build into a downpour, and the windowsill explodes with raindrops. We all look out of the window as though we've never seen rain before. The cool gust of air, the first in months, drifts through the window, and Grandma takes a deep breath. It rouses Mum as well, who returns to scrubbing the stains from the floor. "You'd better get ready for work," she says. "You don't want to be late." Despite Mum's warning, I arrive late and soaked through. I expect the foreman to be waiting by my station with his rotan, but for some reason he keeps his distance. Maybe he's heard about my uncle who's just escaped from Execution Island. As I walk between the rows, I notice that everyone is whispering and glancing over at me. News must travel fast. Maybe Roshi was right. Maybe I wouldn't want to be famous after all. As I start sewing, I can tell that Roshi is watching me. But it's not until there is a pile of finished uppers next to my machine that he leans across and whispers to me. "I heard about your family," he says. "I'm sorry about your dad." I swallow hard. "Thanks." Roshi coughs. "How about you come round for El Clasico tomorrow night? Watching Barcelona get thrashed by Real Madrid should help take your mind off things." "Okay. And we could see if the others want to play a match tonight as well." "Okay." I agree because it's easier than resisting, easier than explaining. But all I can think about is Dad being interrogated in a damp, dark cell. And all I want is for things to be back to normal. It rains all day. It rains so hard that the drumming of raindrops on the tin roof drowns out the clatter of the sewing machines. I walk home with Roshi through the downpour, and he goes to call for Fakri and Uston and Widodo while I collect my football. We meet in the square, and I realize I haven't seen any of them since they abandoned me to the dragon almost a week ago. I know Roshi must have talked to them because they all apologize when they see me. Uston even waits until the game has started to remind me that Real Madrid are below Barcelona in La Liga. The conditions are really difficult because the ground is slippery and there are puddles everywhere. A small stream of brown water runs in front of the fence we use as a goal, and Fakri has to stand off his line so his shoes don't fill with water. By the time we get started, it's raining so hard, we have to stop every few minutes to wring out our t-shirts. Eventually, we decide to take them off and just play in our shorts. The game does not go very well for Roshi and me. The puddles make it really difficult to pass to each other because they slow the ball down. One puddle is so deep that it stops the ball completely, and every time it floats on the surface, two players splash in to try and win it. It doesn't help that Uston and Widodo are cheats. At one point, I'm about to score, but Uston kicks my standing foot from under me. I land heavily in a puddle and get some of the gritty water in my eye. "Ah, that's a penalty," I shout, rubbing my eye with my wrist. "Oh, shut up," Uston says. "You dived, just like Wakefield." Fakri is supposed to referee as well as being goalkeeper, but when I ask him whether it's a penalty, he shrugs and says that he didn't see it properly. My eye is burning, and whenever I rub it, the pain gets worse. "Are you crying?" Widodo asks. "No," I say, even though I can feel hot tears welling up and mixing with the rainwater on my cheeks. "I just got something in my eye." "Ha!" Houston says. "Don't get upset, Budi. Real Madrid haven't lost the title to Barcelona just yet." "Shut up," Roshi says. "You won't be so smug when you get knocked out of the Copa del Rey." Houston pushes Roshi, and for a moment it looks as though a fight is about to break out. Fakri makes a move to separate them, and while he's off his line, Widodo blasts the ball against the fence. 1-0, he shouts, looking up and pointing to the dark clouds overhead. Uston turns away from Roshi and puts an arm around Widodo's neck in celebration. That doesn't count, I say. Fakhri, you have to tell them that doesn't count. We weren't even playing. Fakhri shrugs again and goes to collect the ball. What's the matter? Ustan asks. Afraid you can't come back from a goal down? Whatever, Roshi says. Come on. Let's play. My eye is still itchy and sore, but we manage to get a goal back almost immediately. Roshi makes a run between Ustan and Widodo, and I chip it over their heads. Fakhri comes out to catch it, but Roshi beats him to it and heads the ball into the goal. We don't even bother celebrating. The rain falls so hard it stings our faces when we follow Fakhri's high kick into the air for the restart. We'll have to stop soon, Roshi shouts. You can forfeit if you want, Ustan says, but Barker never quit. We play on. I can tell everyone is in a bad mood because there are more fouls than passes. At one point, Roshi slips in the mud and Widodo kicks him in the side, trying to get the ball from beneath him. This is stupid, I shout. I can hardly see the opposite side of the square through the downpour. Can't we play the rest of the match when it's not raining so hard? Just because you're scared of losing, Ustan says. Fine. Next goal wins. Fakhri kicks the ball out and Roshi manages to head it down to me. Ustan lunges at my feet, sliding through a shallow puddle, but I sidestep his tackle and run towards the goal. Widodo chases me, but I know he isn't going to catch me in time. Fakhri steps toward it and forward to block my shot, but I pass the ball beyond his outstretched leg. As I run off to celebrate, my hands in my shape of a heart, I look back at the goal. My heart sinks as I watch the ball stop dead in the stream that runs in front of the fence. It's like watching a horrible slow-motion replay as Widodo hurdles over Fakhri and slams the ball into the goal. Ustan picks himself up off the floor and runs over to Widodo. He jumps on his back and cheers, shaking his fist in my direction. You're both cheats, I shout. I can't hear you, Ustan says, holding his hand to his ear as Widodo carries him around. I'm going home, Roshi says, picking up his Manchester United shirt and wringing it out. No, we've got to stay and beat them, I say. Yeah, says Ustan, jumping down from Widodo's back and strutting up to us. Surely you don't have to go home yet, it's still early. Your sisters won't even be at work. Roshi's hands curl into fists. Don't talk about my family, he says through gritted teeth, his face set against the driving rain. Ustan looks at me and smiles. Come on, Roshi, we all know what they really do. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone's got to make a living, even if it's as a one more word and you'll regret it, Roshi shouts. He looks like he's about to erupt. Widodo puts her hand on Ustan's shoulder as if to pull him away, but Ustan doesn't move. He just smirks at me again. And when he speaks, he savors each word like it's coated in sugar. Even if it is as a couple of Roshi's punch beats the word to his lips. And it isn't the kind of punch you sometimes see in a match between Real Madrid and Barcelona. Ustan doesn't grab his face and flop around on the floor like a fish out of water. Roshi punches him like a boxer, and Ustan falls like a tree. We don't all clamor around Roshi, shoving and swearing and slapping in the air. There's no referee blowing his whistle and waving a red card above his head. We stand like statues, staring at the motionless body between us. Roshi pulls his Manchester United shirt over his head, fighting to get his arms through the soaked sleeves, and storms off. As he walks away, I notice all the letters are peeling away from his back, and the top of the 7 hangs off, flapping with every step he takes. And it's only after he turns the corner that I finally consider that Ustan was about to say. Maybe Roshi's sisters aren't just Pemonlung. Maybe they do something else at night. Maybe they... Roshi, I shout, setting off after him. Wait! What about Ustan? Fakhri asks, looking at me with wide eyes. Widodo is still staring at his brother. Get him home. I turn and run, clutching my football to my shirtless body. The rain falls so hard it stings my shoulders, but I run through the alley and go after alley until I catch up with Roshi. Even when I pull alongside him, it seems as though he's trying to get away from me. Stop walking so fast, I say. I can't keep up. He glances at me and walks even faster. You should have let me go home when I wanted to. None of that would have happened. He turns down a narrow alleyway so that I have to walk behind him. I'm sorry, I say, but it doesn't matter what your sisters do. Roshi suddenly spins round and points a finger in my face. His eyes are wild. You mention my sisters again and I'll knock you out as well. Got it? He turns away before I can reply, so I shout at the peeling letters on his back instead. But we're friends, Roshi. I don't care about what Ustan said. He keeps walking. But I don't want him to leave like this, so I shout something else. Roshi's sisters are liars, and I don't care who knows it. That gets his attention. He stops, turns, strides back towards me. For a moment, I think he's going to walk straight over me, but he stops just in time, about an arm's length away. Are you going to make me hurt you, Buddy? Rainwater drips from his nose into the puddle between us. His fists are clenched. I just want you to stop being like this. I've told you that it doesn't matter. Why don't we go back and play football? Just you and me. I don't care about football, Roshi shouts. Don't you understand? What does it matter to me if Real Madrid win La Liga or the Champions League? How does that make my life any better? I'll still be stuck here with you working in a factory. Forever. I've never seen Roshi this angry before, and I don't know what to say to calm him down. My eyes start filling with tears, but I'm determined not to cry in front of him. Do you know what I wanted to be when I was younger, he asks. I shrug weakly. My shoulders ache. I don't know. A footballer? Roshi smiles, but it looks more like a grimace. No, Buddy, not a footballer. I wanted to be an astronaut. Someone who went out and discovered things. Someone who changed the world. At school, I read every book I could find about space. My teacher said you need to be good at mathematics and physics to become an astronaut, so I took all the extra classes in those subjects that I could. I wanted to make my family proud and to be able to send them money and nice things to make their lives more comfortable. But then my dad died and I had to come and work at the factory. And I knew none of it would ever happen. Roshi's face twists into another painful-looking smile, and he glances up at the narrow strip of sky above the alley. Do you know what's funny? I shake my head. I can't think of anything that's funny. I still want to be an astronaut. Only now I'm not bothered about adventure or money or fame or even providing my family with a better life. Now I want to be an astronaut so I can get as far away from this place, from you and everyone else in it as possible. Roshi leans in and lowers his voice almost to a whisper. His hand is on the knife inside me. I'm going to say this slowly so that you can understand it. I don't care about football. He straightens up and turns away. It's like I'm too full with all the bleeding inside, and the hot blood fills my eyes and spills over my cheeks. You're lying, I shout. But Roshi keeps walking. You must care about football. You have to. And suddenly I'm angry. angry that Roshi is walking away from me, angry that he doesn't care, angry that I'm crying. My whole body tingles with rage. I clench my hands into fists and run after Roshi. I am so angry that I don't know what to do when I catch up with him, so I just shove him in the back as hard as I can. He takes a couple of steps to steady himself and reels around. I close my eyes and throw myself at him, swinging my arms in a flurry of punches. I open my eyes just before I hit the ground. Stones scratch against my bare chest. I can feel Roshi standing over me. As I try to get up, he kneels on my back, pinning me among the litter of the alleyway. I try to lift my head, but Roshi pushes it into a gritty puddle. I remember too late how much bigger Roshi is. The air is being pressed from my lungs. It feels as though my ribcage is about to collapse. "What's wrong with you?" he shouts, punching me in the side. "What don't you understand? I don't care about any of it, and neither should you. Do you really think you make Karen Wakefield's boots? Or that one day you'll visit the Bernabeu? Wake up, Bodhi!" He punches me in the side again. I'm bleeding. I know I'm bleeding. "Do you really think we'll ever get out of this place? We're never getting out, never." He punches me again. Bleeding, contasted, can't breathe. "You'll never become a professional footballer, just like I'll never become an astronaut. It's time to grow up, Bodhi. This is all there is. This is your life." Roshi punches me in the side one last time and gets off my back. I don't move. I just lie in the dirt. The grit sticks to my chest, my cheek. I can taste it on my tongue. Roshi stands over me, panting. He takes half a step towards me, and I brace myself. But he doesn't kick me. He just steps back, turns around, walks away. I lie completely still, breathing in the salty, earthy smell of the wet ground. My ribcage hurts. When I get to my feet, my body feels heavy and numb, like I've slept for a long time in an awkward position. I dust myself down and rub my side. I'm not crying anymore. I pick up my shirt and football and shuffle home, dragging my feet. Kieran Wakefield could earn my yearly wage in the time it takes me to get home. When I walk through the door, Mum almost drops the cup of water she's holding up to Grandma's lips. Grandma must have had another coughing fit because her eyes are red and watery, and she scowls at the cup in front of her. She doesn't seem to notice that I'm here. "Bodhi," Mum says, her eyes wide. "What have you been doing?" I look down at my aching, shirtless body. There is a big muddy stripe along my side. Rainwater drips from my fringe onto the floor. My shirt feels cold and heavy in my hand. "You're absolutely filthy," Mum says, setting the cup down on the table and coming over to me. "You've been out playing football, haven't you? What were you thinking? Have you cut yourself anywhere? Your clothes are soaked, and look at your boots. We can't afford to buy you a new pair if those get ruined." My feet feel soggy and sandy inside my shoes. As I roll my foot to the side, I notice that the upper is coming away from the sole. You know how tight money is at the moment, Bodhi, and the last thing we need is to be buying clothes to replace the ones you've ruined. You can't play football forever, you know. You will have to grow up one day. "What about professional footballers?" I ask, tears coming to my eyes again. "They play football all the time. When I'm a professional footballer, I'll get a new pair of boots every week." "Oh, stop being childish, Bodhi, and don't talk back to me like that." "That's enough," Grandma says. "Bickering won't solve anything." Mum takes a deep breath and sighs. "Let's get you dry and into some clean clothes," she says. "Who knows how we'll pay for the medicine if you catch a fever. You'll be on rice porridge and water until you get better." I changed out of my damp clothes. My side starts to really hurt, but I know nothing's broken because I never break anything. I just bleed on the inside, and no one sees. There isn't anything for dinner because it's Friday, so I lie on my mattress instead. I unroll my poster, but no matter how long I look at it, I can't see anything new. I must have memorized every blade of grass and every colourful smudge in the crowd. My finger moves in a continuous pattern, tracing the lines of Wakefield's autograph over and over and over again. And I know, without even thinking about it, that I'll have to sell my poster to keep my family out of the slums. I think of what I'd give just to be one of those smudges.